I'm Randy Rohde, and I'm fascinated with entrepreneurs and small business owners. Plus, I love baseball. Every show, I sit down with a small business owner, and we discuss their running the bases of entrepreneurship. We throw the ball around on strategy, management, execution, and innovation. Plus, a little fun baseball talk. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Settle in, grab your Cracker Jacks, and you know what they say.
Play ball.
And it's a great day for a ball game. Hey, this is Randy Rohde, running the bases with small businesses. And today's guest comes to us from the great state of Oklahoma. This busy mom of two became an accidental entrepreneur. We're going to hear a little bit more about that. When the public relations company that she had been working with from her college internship to eventually becoming COO and partner, they hit some big stumbling blocks and she knew she had to pivot. So she did so by creating her own public relations agency. She is known as an expert at keeping complex projects on task and within budget while clearly communicating her clients' brands. With more than 14 years of public relations and marketing experience, she's advised various industries, including social services, healthcare, transportation, retail, technology, and finance. Furthermore, she leverages her experience and skills in public service and marketing in the academia, serving as an adjunct professor at Oklahoma State University. So there we go. Please welcome to the show, CEO of Resolute Public Relations, Nicole Morgan. Nicole, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Hey, so our researchers, kind of find the most fascinating pieces of information on people. And this one, I'm not even sure exactly where she found this one, but the info that I have in front of me says that you have been to the Netherlands 27 times. Is that right?
And I'm going again next week.
And you're going again. Do you have a client over there? What do you do over there?
No. So my mom's from the Netherlands. Her whole family is there. And so I like to go back at least every other year if I can. Sometimes I've been going more than that, but just really trying to keep the connections there with all of my aunts and uncles and my cousins and to bridge that for my children too. So yeah, it's my happy place. It's really where I get to go and unplug and eat all the good food and everything.
That's incredible. 27 times. Well, you well traveled, at least on that path. Here's a little fun fact as well. Did you know that the Dutch are the tallest nation in the world?
I do. My family is very short, so we did not get that gene. We've been told that so many times, but I mean, I'm 5'4". My mom's I think 5'3". So yeah, we're not the tallest people, but that is a true fact. They are also the most relaxed people in the world. There have been a lot of studies on that. So
really?
They have a lot going for them.
Nice. Well, you really must kind of stand out, so to speak. If you're the 5'4". I think the average height is like 6 foot for men and just under that.
Yeah. Yeah. And dark hair. I mean, they're always very thrown off because I'm fluent in Dutch, having been there so much and kind of grown up around my family. So people are always kind of thrown off when I start speaking Dutch to them. But it's like I said, it's always kind of been home for me.
Oh, that's fun. I'd love to get over there someday. So you say you're an accidental entrepreneur, and I think we found a quote that says, like me, my grandfather was a bit of an accidental entrepreneur. So explain what that means to you. How did you, and for that matter, even your grandfather, become an accidental entrepreneur?
Yeah. So my grandfather, lived in the Netherlands, and he was always in sales. And so he had started working for a company that sold allergy medication that was looking to start essentially a franchise in the Netherlands. It was a German company. And so he was helping the franchisee set everything up and had been putting all this work into it. And right before the business launched, the franchisee said, I've changed my mind. I don't want to do this anymore. And my grandfather at the time, I think, was in his mid 40s. He had 7 kids. that's a pretty big thing to pull the rug out from under you. And,
Wow.
and he said, well, can I just take over then? And the guy said, yeah, sure. Have at it. And so he did it. Ended up being one of the only distributors of allergy medication in the Netherlands. Had a very successful business. 3 of his kids now run that business. And so it's been quite a legacy. And I remember going as a child, there weren't a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And so I would go help in the business and, put stickers on things and lick envelopes and just got to kind of be there for that. And so maybe in hindsight, that sparked something in me, seeing that this was something that was possible. But as you kind of had mentioned in your intro, the company that I worked for, I started as an intern and stayed there for 10 years. So I was very loyal to the company, really loved what I was doing, and never had any ambitions of starting my own organization. But things kind of transpired and there were a lot of roadblocks that started to happen. The owner had some pretty significant personal challenges and his name was on the door. And it just became very clear that the company was not going to be able to continue the way that it was. Do you want me to jump into the kind of the light bulb moment that turned it all for me? Okay.
I want to hear the light bulb. Yes.
Yeah. So things were really progressing. Owner of the company really, if I saw him once every 2 weeks, that was good. He wasn't really engaged. And that was great for me because the less he would do, the more I would do. And I had really great relationships with my clients, but as things were unfolding in his personal life, I had clients saying, hey, is he still involved? Are things still going to be, is the company still going to be around? And I was really working to try to bridge all of that because like I said, I really loved my job. And it got to the point where I was supposed to go on vacation with my family and traveling is it's really, I need that to recharge and to unplug and to have that quality time with my family. And so I was on vacation with them and it was a road trip to New York. So not a short trip from Tulsa. And the whole time we're just talking about this. And I'm sure my husband was like, oh my gosh, like, please just make a decision already. And before I left, I started having people saying, Nicole, you've basically been running the company. Why don't you just start your own? And I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that to my boss. But it got to the point where I was on vacation and actually had to book a flight to come home to meet with some of my clients because it was getting that bad. And I'm sitting in the airport by myself. I've just left my family on vacation. And I was like, this just isn't worth it. It's not worth it. And so kind of in that moment, I just decided I was going to come home, quit my job, hang my own shingle and see what happened. And that's kind of how it started.
Wow.
And 8 years later, it's worked out. So.
And then here you go. Right. Yes. So you've never looked back. So now the company that you have is Resolute Public Relations. Tell us about Resolute. What do you do? What kind of clients do you serve?
Yeah. So I always knew that the field of public relations was changing. And when I got my degree at Oklahoma State, it was very, you got a degree in public relations, or you got a degree in advertising, or you went the journalism route. It was very segmented. As I started working in the field, when I say this to my students now, they're like, oh my gosh, but Facebook was invented when I was in college and was just kind of starting to take off. And so one of the things that I really loved about my job was that my clients would let me test things. And so I'm seeing Facebook and I'm kind of starting to learn about search engine optimization. And I had a client that got $1 million investment to completely rebrand and rename their company. And so I got to be really involved in that part of the business. And so I'm kind of starting to see how all these pieces work together. For example, as I was working on some search engine optimization for this client's new website, I'm seeing that all of the articles that I'd been pitching to the media were showing up on the first page of Google. And that kind of, a little bit of a light bulb for me where I was thinking, okay, how are these things connected? And so when I started Resolute, it was really an opportunity for me to, yes, people know me for public relations, but to really start an agency that was going to be fully integrated from day one. And that's really how we've moved forward. We believe that you cannot do one thing anymore to be successful because everything is so integrated. And so we build custom plans for our clients to help them achieve their goals.
That's fascinating. That's good. So you started, so it's been about 8 years with Resolute. Did you have, and so you started, as you say, kind of as the college intern to all of a sudden now you're running your own company. What kind of a learning curve was that for you?
I can't even verbalize what the learning curve was. Again, because we were so segmented, I didn't take a lot of business classes. So there were a lot of things that I did not know how to do. And I also didn't have a lot of knowledge from my previous company on how to do them. I think there were a lot of, in hindsight now and having run my own business, there are a lot of things that I would have done differently had the previous company been mine. And so it was a blessing to be able to start from scratch. But I have always said, if I don't know the answer to something or this isn't my area of expertise, I'm going to have to bring in help. And so I lean really heavily on the professionals that I've hired to help me. My CPA, I feel like I talk to him all the time. I have 2 different business consultants, one who has worked in PR firms and really understands the finances and how to run an agency. I have another one who's more skilled in HR and operations. So there are a lot of things where, you kind of don't know what you don't know until you hit this wall and you're going, oh no, how do I get over this?
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so true with so many entrepreneurs, myself included. Sometimes you just don't know what you don't know until you need to know it.
Yeah. We were really lucky in the beginning. There was actually a co-working space that opened here locally, and it was a locally owned, run by family foundations who really have a heart for entrepreneurship. And one of those family foundations was a client of ours. And so we were actually actively promoting this co-working space, trying to get it filled. And the more I was learning about it, the more I started to think, this could be something that would be really helpful for me. And so we were one of the first companies to actually office there. And that was tremendously helpful, just being around other entrepreneurs, because it helped me realize, okay, if I don't know the answer to this, I'm not the only one. It's not that I, just really got into something that I know nothing about. This is natural. And 2, there was a network of professionals that they could connect me with who had already walked that path.
I actually have some notes about that particular place. I think 36 Degrees North. Is that the name of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love the idea and kind of that community. And you mentioned earlier, just a few minutes ago, and that you had some business consultants now helping you, guiding you through some various expertise that they have in operating a business. When you were initially running, or when you initially started Resolute, you were operating in this kind of co-working space. It sounds like you kind of had this built-in kind of support group of other entrepreneurs in there with you. Would you recommend that environment as well to others?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, it depends on where you are in your business. We definitely hit a point where we realized we had outgrown the space. But when we first moved in, I had just hired my second employee. So we were a team of 3. And I knew how to wrap my arms around that. I was really just going, oh, I think there's something to this. And I think that I could grow this business and this would be fun, was really kind of where my mind was at. But then once things really started taking off, within the span of a year and a half, we were up to 6 employees. And at that point, they kind of built the space to that you would outgrow it at some point. Our office was really made for 3 people. The conference rooms, if you're in there having meetings, you book those for an hour. So if your meeting runs over, somebody else is out there waving, going, hey, I booked this too. So we were kind of taking over a lot of spaces more than the other coworkers. And so we just realized we were getting to the point where we needed our own space. But in the interim, to not have to worry about the copier not working, to have a receptionist who could field, salespeople who would just stop by wanting to talk to me. There was one day where I was in the kitchen and I was just completely overwhelmed. And they always had free food, by the way, which was another perk. There was a chocolatier right next door. So they were always bringing us their leftovers. So I'm standing in the kitchen, probably stuffing my face with chocolate. And the director of the space came over and he said, do you want an advisor? Do you need someone to talk to? And I was like, oh my God, yes. And to have someone see that for you was really helpful, because I could see where I would have floundered had I been on my own.
The moment, or I guess when you decided that you needed to move on, or it was time to move on, really was because of the growth that you were experiencing as a company, which is always exciting and always encouraging. I'm curious, in your particular world, in PR, do you think, is it easier or harder to be in the PR field now versus when you first started?
Well, if we're going to talk strictly public relations, then I definitely think it's more difficult. A lot of the more traditional tactics that PR professionals use, working with the media, working with reporters, it's just changed drastically. The media landscape has changed so much. There used to be local publications in every single community here in Oklahoma. I would have no problem saying I could pitch, and place probably 4 to 5 articles a month. And I would start there, and then I would always get more because there was so much opportunity. And now that's just not the landscape. I mean, we have one daily newspaper. The business section is being run essentially by one person,
right,
and it's so thin. So it's not that they don't want to cover the stories, but there are just so few people to cover them. And so I am really thankful that I made the choice from the beginning to be a more integrated firm. And I know that there were people in the public relations field who looked down on, PR professionals, saying they could also be marketers and vice versa, because they were so separate for a long time. But if you can be creative and look at other ways that you can own that content, and earn that content, then I think you're going to be a lot more successful than if you approach it the way that we always have.
I think in one of your blogs on your site, I love this phrase: a good PR defense is a good PR offense. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that concept mean exactly?
Preparation. I mean, really, we've seen in the last 2 years that no company is immune to a crisis. Between trying to communicate the changes of COVID, I mean, I just think of the evolution that our clients went through in the last year. So, I mean, you start with COVID coming up and having to make decisions about how you're going to pivot as a business. Are you going completely virtual? Are you changing how you're offering your products, how your customers can engage with you? It was such a lightning rod of an issue that you had to approach it in a way that would not piss off a segment of your customers. Then you had politics wrapped up in that, and you could have an employee or an executive kind of maybe be a little too vocal about some of those things. And then all of a sudden now you've angered a portion of your audience. Larger organizations, I mean, we had a lot of clients who came to us where the larger the organization was, the greater the liability of your employees, and someone posting something offensive or inappropriate on social media, and someone takes a screenshot of that and then they send it to corporate and they're like, do you know this is your employee and is this what you stand for?
Right.
So there are a lot of crises that can occur that people have never thought of. And if you can be prepared for that ahead of time, you never know how or when a crisis will unfold, but you can proactively think about it and kind of bucket it out and be prepared so that when that happens, because things will start to happen quickly in that situation, that you're more prepared instead of kind of standing there going, oh no, how are we going to respond? Or putting your head in the sand and not responding at all, which is the worst thing you could do.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And parts of that certainly fall into this bucket of reputation management, I think. What can companies or small businesses be doing now kind of proactively, as you're talking about, to help protect and guide reputation management?
There are a lot of organizations. Tulsa is a very philanthropic community, and I know there are other communities like this. There are a lot of organizations that are doing really great things in the community. They're giving back. They're allowing time for volunteering. They're taking care of their employees. a lot of, very admirable things that they just don't talk about. And the feedback that I get a lot of times is, well, I don't want to be bragging about myself. And, I just feel like I do it because it's the right thing. And I totally get that. And people typically don't respond well if all you do is brag on yourself. So I think that that's spot on. However, when there is a crisis or something that maybe occurs that doesn't align with the principles of the organization, it's really helpful to have those things reflected somewhere. And so just an easy thing to do is to start building out kind of a newsroom or a repository of those positive instances. So maybe you have a blog area where you're talking about different organizations that you support in the community and shining light on them. Being able to empower your employees to talk about the different benefits that an organization provides. But I just think that people don't do that enough. And so, when the crisis does happen, you kind of look back and you go, oh man, I wish we had talked about that more, because we're doing great things and now all people see are the negative.
That is some great advice. Earlier, you had mentioned about this great opportunity. A client or a company you were working with all of a sudden had this big investment. You got to work on relaunching, recreating a brand. I'd like to talk about brand identity maybe for a minute. How important is this for small businesses?
So important. I think that, it's not cheap to hire a professional designer and to really, put together a strong brand, but I just always believe you should put your best foot forward, and people will pay attention to that. They pay attention to the materials that you put in front of them, the logo that you have on your business card, what your business card looks like. I even think the thickness of your business card. And, there are a lot of places where people can cut corners, and I completely understand. I didn't have any money saved up when I started my business because I never planned on it. It just happened. But there were certain things that I knew were going to be very important because they were going to be reflective of who I was as a professional. And you might not be in the branding space, but your brand identity should match the level of service that you're going to be providing.
I love that quote. The brand identity should match the level of service that you're going to provide. That is a great quote. Are there questions maybe that you could help our listeners many are small business owners? Are there questions maybe that you can provide that small business owners can ask to help create their brand?
So I think a great place to start, and where we start with a lot of our clients, are one-on-one interviews, talking to your customers, some of your star customers who really have been behind you. I was really grateful for a group of potential clients that when I started my own business said, hey, Nicole, let's give this a shot, and they were willing to kind of go out there and give me a try. And a lot of those clients have stayed with me for a long time. And so I value their opinion. I am always just so indebted to the fact that they got me going. And so talking to some of those clients that have been with you for a long time, that being said, our business has evolved a lot in the last 8 years. So talking to some of your newer customers who have known you at this point in time as you've changed, talking to customers where, it didn't go well. You screwed up. There was something that you're not proud of it. You get that pit in your stomach every time you think about it. Talk to them too. And I think that there are always lessons that you can learn from some of those things, but talking to all of those different segments really gives you what you're looking for are trends. What are the common themes that people are saying about you? And sometimes it's helpful to have a third party do that. So we actually did this, I guess it's probably been about 4 years ago. And we had one of our contractors call our clients. So that way they weren't talking to me. I wanted people to be able to speak freely and to anonymously give that feedback.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And so we ask things like, what, in your own words, what does Resolute PR do? And we want to know how they feed that back to us. And if they were to only talk about media relations and public relations, then we know we have some work to do, because we also do digital marketing and we do brand identity and we have a lot of other services. So it's helpful to know from your customers what they think you do. What do you think are some of their strengths? Have you worked with any of their competitors? And how did they compare? What were some of the things that made them stand out versus their competitors? One of my favorite questions to ask is, if you were the CEO, what would you do? And the ideas that some of these organizations have, they're so creative because they're thinking about it. They're coming from a completely different place.
Right.
So you're really trying to get to the heart of who you are as an organization, what makes you stand out, and where are you looking to go in the future? And that doing that research before you engage a designer is going to be incredibly helpful in getting them going and moving in the right direction.
Love that. Excellent advice. So I know with your company, with Resolute, I mean, this is your baby. I mean, you started, it was you and maybe one other, and now you have 10 on staff. And so how do you motivate your team? How do you keep them excited about moving forward and about the company?
This has been kind of one of those learning curve things for me, because I did not realize how much that depended on me. If I was burnt out, they all get burnt out too. If I'm energized, they all seem to be energized. That's a lot of pressure as a business owner to keep yourself at that level, and no one can do it 100% of the time. But I really believe that the power of one-on-one touch points, our team is small enough that I can do that. But at least with my senior management team, I'm meeting with them one-on-one every week. And we do talk about clients kind of at a high level, what's going on, but we also have the conversations of, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? And we talk to each other as humans and as friends. And so I think that helps keep them engaged. I know it helps keep me engaged, because then if someone's having an off day, I have some context for why, and I can be sympathetic and give them flexibility. That's another thing that I hear a lot from the team that they've really appreciated, is the flexibility. Even before COVID, when I started my business, my kids were really small. I mean, my son was not even a year old. My daughter was 4. So I knew that when I started this, I wanted to be able to be there for the school programs, or to get away to pick them up from school every once in a while, or do something fun. And I always have extended that to the whole team, whether they have kids or not. So I think that that's really important. And with COVID, that's just been amplified. Now we work in a hybrid environment. So we have 2 days a week where everyone works from home, and we have unlimited vacation, which is another perk. So really prioritizing that self-care.
I have 2 questions kind of bouncing off of what you just stated. So first of all, 2 days when you work from home, do people kind of plan that on their own, coordinate and say, okay, hey, Nicole, I want to work on at home on Mondays and Fridays. Is that okay? Or do you segment it out like, well, we need some people here on these days, and then, or how do you play that schedule?
Yeah, that has been an evolution. So pre-COVID, I did have a few employees who worked part-time. And so they picked the days that they wanted to work from home. And it was fine. I mean, they were getting their work done, but it created some challenges just in terms of even scheduling meetings, because you don't want to, have someone come in on their day off technically to be there for a meeting. So it was a little challenging. And then, so now we all work from home on Wednesdays and Fridays, and actually a half day on Monday as well. So what I found is that it's really important to have everybody in the office on the same day, because that's when a lot of the collaboration happens. That's typically when the meetings happen. So everybody's able to really, do that part of it, so that on the days when they're working from home, they can really put their heads down and get their work done. And not saying that it works 100% of the time. If a client needs to meet on a Wednesday or a Friday, we're not off that day, so we'll still do it. But we really try to kind of prioritize the collaboration and the in-person meetings on the days when we're here.
Yeah, that seems like that would work much better. I was just, my staff are all dispersed, and so everybody works from somewhere. I think it's kind of interesting to think, wow, how would that work? And I know there's tremendous value in having folks together in the office, if possible, just that collaboration, that vibe, that energy that you can get. So yeah, that's a great idea. I think a great process. You also mentioned this thing that I love, unlimited vacation. How does that work? And I mean, that is a very progressive kind of idea as far as kind of planning a workforce. How do you manage that?
Yeah, well, it started kind of accidental because I didn't want to have to track it, and no one was taking advantage. And so I thought, well, we'll just keep doing this. What I've learned is that we definitely have to put up some guardrails and be a little more strategic about it. So we're in the process of doing some of those things. But at a high level, it's making sure, one, you can't take a month off. So it has to be within reason. And usually, again, with us working from home on Fridays, that kind of typically people will take that Friday off, and then it's not so bad because really you're just missing one day in the office.
Right.
So yeah, usually people will take a week or just a few days on either end of the weekend, and they have to have it approved by their supervisor. We don't like multiple people from the same team being out at the same time because
Right.
that you're having someone else kind of step in. And then everybody's been really great about still being available if there's a question, or they'll kind of keep an eye on their email so they can check in. But it really has not been a problem so far. Actually, what we found is the opposite to be true. There are people who, because they don't have that trigger of knowing that they have vacation that's about to expire, they just don't take it.
Yeah.
And so we have to actually force some people to get out of the office and take that time off to recharge.
Well, I love vacation, and I know even if I could say, well, I've got unlimited vacation, I suppose. But I like what I do. I like to work, and I'm one of those people that tend not to take time off, even though I probably should more. One of the things I think is a great example and a lesson for business owners, something that you do that we kind of stumbled across, but I think you do this very intentional, which is that you tend to celebrate a lot of your employees and highlight and promote or recognize your team members through the company's social media, like Facebook. We've seen just a lot of posts that you do, and like celebrating, congratulating team member Randy for, hey, you did a great job on doing this. We couldn't have done it without Randy doing this kind of thing. That is a great example, I think, in order to help kind of cultivate this culture with your company. How did you stumble across that? Is that just one of these natural, wonderful things of Nicole, or was that intentional that you learned through an advisor?
Yeah, no, actually, it does not come naturally to me because it's not something that particularly motivates me. And so I'm the type of person that I just kind of put my head down and I do my job. And I mean, I'll apply for awards and I like recognition, but I don't need it to feel like I'm doing a good job. Not everyone operates that way. And so I had some great employees who have been with me for a long time come to me and say, Nicole, like, this is something I struggle with. I need you to tell me when I'm doing a good job. And I always thought, well, I thought I was saying that, but they weren't hearing me, which means I wasn't doing a very good job of it. So I did. I talked to one of my business advisors about this, and I said, can you give me some tips for how I can do this better? And I did put someone on my team in charge of our social media, and I delegated that to her. I said, I really want to make sure we recognize birthdays. I want to make sure we're recognizing our work, and that we profile, whoever it was that worked on it. It's always been important to me that I'm not the only face of the organization, and that people know that there are other people on the team who make the magic happen. And so that, I think, has always been something that's come natural to me. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because that tells me that I've come a long way.
Well, I'm giving you some recognition.
Yeah.
Well, and you hit a great line right there, because I think it's a tremendous lesson for us all, which is just because we may think that we're doing it, but people are not hearing it. And so the perception is really what counts is their perception, not because we think we're doing it as, well, I think I'm doing it. Well, how come you're not hearing it? Well, they're not getting it. And so we have to change, I think, in the way that we're communicating or processing or doing whatever it is that we're doing, because it doesn't matter what Randy thinks. It's really is the employee or my wife or my kids or whoever it is, right, in our organization.
Well, and I have no data to back this up, but my hunch is that a lot of entrepreneurs probably struggle with this because if you were someone who needed a lot of feedback and
Sure.
recognition, you probably wouldn't have made it as far as you have because
Yeah.
it's a lonely thing to do. And so I think that I'm glad that this employee felt comfortable enough to tell me that and to be honest with me about that. And that is something that I've always really encouraged with the team is I have an open door policy. I want you to talk to me about anything that you're struggling with or anything that we could be doing better. And we've had a lot of honest conversations. And so that's something that I've always really appreciated and encouraged.
Yeah, good steps forward. All right, Nicole, it's that time of the season.
And it's time for the 7th inning stretch.
All right. Before we started recording, I asked Nicole if she liked baseball. And
I've been dreading this.
yes. And her comment to me was, I'm the most nervous about the 7th inning stretch. So I had to assure her, don't worry. It's going to be easy. So the 7th inning, though, is where we get to ask you a little question that's kind of in your ball field and expertise. We're going to talk about Major League Baseball logos, right? Brand identities.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
all right.
So
none of them are coming to mind right now.
That's okay. A little background on the MLB logo. So it was designed by a gentleman, Jerry Dewar, in 1968. And it really hasn't altered a lot really since then. It really is pretty much kind of held that same look since it was adopted back then. And it really was introduced at the beginning of the 69 series. And I never really noticed this until we started doing a little research on this. Like, oh, yeah. But they were kind of intentional about the way they designed it so they would be a little more ambiguous. Like if you look at, you don't know whether it's a left-handed batter or a right-handed batter. I mean, they were really trying to get some stuff across that way. So while Major League Baseball has kept their logo, the individual teams are a little bit of a different story. They've rebranded quite a bit, actually. And so this is where we're going to hit on. The most logo changes is led by the Atlanta Braves. They've changed their logo. I don't know exactly how old the team is off the top of my head, but they've changed their logo 30 times since the team has been underway. Can you imagine changing logos that often? Is crazy. The New York Yankees have had the longest current logo, and similar to the MLB, they introduced their logo that they currently have in 1968, and they haven't looked back since. They decided, like, this is a winner for us. We're keeping it. The fewest logo changes were the Rockies, and they have the lowest total with just one logo change since 1993. Here's your question, though, Nicole. We're doing this via video as well, and she's kind of like, oh my gosh, she's this look. What is the average number of logo changes per team in the MLB?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's 16.
Not
Totally
bad.
guessing here.
That's not bad. 16, 11 actually is. So,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
We'll call that a hit and you got on base. There you go with that. But yeah, 11 times. I know. So I live here in Cleveland, and this is our first season we changed the name and we changed the logo. And so there's a lot of processes. And, as you were talking about brand identity and relaunching or renewing a brand, can you imagine what that would be like for a baseball team? All of the logos, everything in the stadium that you have, let alone digital, and crazy.
Yeah. There are so many assets that people don't think about when they talk about a logo change or even a name change for that matter. And it's interesting. I don't know if it's a post-COVID, everybody kind of has like evaluated themselves and is like reinventing themselves. And so we've had a lot of potential clients come to us wanting rebrands. And I love doing rebrands. I mean, I think it's a lot of fun, but I do have to ask them, are you sure? Because you think about all of the signs, the t-shirts, the uniforms, all the tchotchke that you have. I mean, there are a lot of things that have that logo on it. And when people really will identify with that brand, it should become synonymous with the organization itself. And you see that and you immediately think of them. So it's a big undertaking.
It is. We, my agency, we rebranded about 3 years ago, I think, a little more than 3 years ago. And I never really kind of thought about it at that point, but oh my gosh, it was a big process of all of the assets that we had and to get it out there. But it was a lot of fun. I think the Yankees have got it right, though. If you got a good one, just hold on to it. So,
all right. You get to the point where, I was just going to say, you get to the point where sometimes things just get so outdated that you have to. So, like one that we just did this last year was for the Port of Catoosa, which is the most inland waterway in the country. And it's right here in Tulsa. No one expects that, but they have shipments come all the way from China to Tulsa. And their logo had been around for 50 years, but it was a tugboat. And in 50 years, the port has evolved so much. I mean, they have a huge industrial park. They have rail, they have trucking. I mean, they have all of these different modes of transportation that all converge on this one location. And so the 50th anniversary was kind of the excuse for saying, hey, I think it's time to move beyond the tugboat and to do something different.
Yeah, I can imagine,
so
especially in that, because it makes it, a tugboat would make it seem like it's not as nearly capable in today's world and environment, and especially in transportation and logistics. And you think a tugboat, but I would think you would need to kind of modernize something like that. So, very good. So we're going to get back into this. You are involved in something that we have a commonality, which is the Chamber of Commerce. And you were actually recognized as Tulsa's Regional Chamber's Young Entrepreneur of the Year. Whenever that was, congratulations. I don't have the year on that, but that's terrific. I think it was 2018. Is that right?
Yeah, it's been a little while. Mm-hmm.
Man, see, I pulled that one out. Why are you involved in the chamber? What's the value that you find?
Well, a few things. One, the chamber, while they weren't my first client, they from the very beginning were a champion for me. They really valued me as a startup, and I think saw potential in me and my business. And so they were really instrumental in helping me get connected to other businesses who could potentially benefit from what we did. So I'm always grateful for that. And they've been very flexible in finding ways for us to sponsor things or to get recognition when even financially we couldn't quite make it. We would do trade, or we would find other ways that we could be involved at that level. Our chamber is very involved in economic development, very involved in education, very involved in policy. And so there are so many different places where you can get plugged in depending on your interest. And I didn't really know what my interest would be. So I honestly feel like I've been involved in almost every single one of them. I would go to luncheons, or I chaired the One Voice Agenda process, which was basically a roundtable discussion, series of roundtable discussions to determine what they wanted the chamber to advocate for at a state level, but also on a national level. So I learned a lot in that process. So I think it has really helped me get plugged in with the business community and the issues that not just that we're facing, but that our clients are facing, and to be better informed. So
in moving forward a little bit, and still wanted to kind of pick your brain on PR advice. Small business owners may not have a big budget for PR. Where would you advise to spend their dollars, and where is it not necessary to spend the dollars?
Social media, I don't think is as necessary as it once was from an organic. So there's organic content and then there's paid content. And with the algorithms working the way that they do, you can spend a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort on developing Facebook posts, Instagram posts, LinkedIn posts that frankly will just not be seen. And it's helpful to have a presence there and to post something every once in a while. But I would not have the expense of hiring someone just to do social media. Now on the paid side, that's a completely different ballgame. And so you have, paid ads through Facebook or through Instagram where you can be very targeted in who you're trying to reach and serving those ads to people who would actually engage with your business. Same thing with Google and LinkedIn. We've seen a lot of success on all of those platforms. I would just tell people to proceed with caution. It's a little bit like a lightsaber. And so if you don't know how to use it, you can waste a lot of money too, or you could chop your arm off. So proceed with caution, but there are a lot of training tools that are out there and things, and a lot of professionals who do this too. And that's where I see more of that moving. What you can do is things that you can be doing on your own would be things like blogging or producing content. And then you can push that content out by backing it with a paid campaign.
That's a great idea. Almost kind of segues, and you almost answered already. Kind of my next question I wanted to hit was, how can small businesses begin to amplify their brand and their brand identity? And I think one of the things is what you just mentioned is creating content on their own, maybe through articles or blogs. Is there anything else that you can think of?
Yeah, well, just getting inside of the mindset of the customer. What are they looking for? What problems are they having, and how can you help them solve those problems? So, like one easy technique that we use is you go to Google, and have you ever searched something and then all of a sudden Google kind of populates what they think you're looking for? That predictive text, they don't pull that out of nowhere. Statistically, a lot of other people are trying to solve that same problem. And so typing in some things that you think your customers might be searching and looking at what are some of those other phrases that are associated with that, and then developing content around it. And content is not just the written word. It doesn't have to be just a blog. It could be an article that gets pitched and is written by your local newspaper or trade publication. It could be a video, and video doesn't always have to be highly produced. It could be something as simple as, what we're doing right now on an iPhone. It could be an infographic, and there are a lot of great low-cost tools out there, like Canva is one that already has templates built out that look really nice for building infographics or different graphics that you could be sharing. So there are a lot of ways to get that out there, but I would say don't just develop content for the sake of developing content. Make sure it's something that aligns with your customer. Yeah,
that's great advice. All right, so here we come. We're down to the bottom of the ninth, and this is where I ask all of our guests, what advice do you have for the rookies in the game? So those people just starting out in business, or those who already have their business and are looking for some guidance from some great veterans like you in the game?
I think that sometimes people just need to hear you can do this. You wouldn't have gotten this far if you couldn't. And it can be really overwhelming when, you get that first big project, or maybe you've been at it for a little while and you get something that it's really big. Like this is kind of the moment where, you're going to make it or break it. And just to have confidence in the skills that you have, that's what got you to this point. And you have worked really hard. You've done your homework, you have built a company. I mean, that takes guts to do that. And so to keep pushing through and to ask for help. If you've hit a wall, it's not because you're a failure. It just means you need some extra help. And so invest in bringing in those advisors or, other organizations, ask for advice. Don't be shy about that, because there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I need a little help here.
If people would like to get a hold of you, we'll have these links in our show notes, but they can reach you via the web at resolutepr.com. Is that right?
Yep. Yes. That's correct.
Very good. Well, listen, Nicole, it's been so great getting to know you a little bit, having you on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great to be here. Thank you for going easy with me on the baseball. I was really hoping the question was going to be like, what's your favorite food to eat at a baseball game? Because that's typically where you'll find me, is standing in line. But
yeah. Well, that's a great question too. I love that.
Yeah.
No, it's been great having you on the show. I appreciate it, and wish the best of luck and growth for you and the team at Resolute. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, folks, that's the ball game. Thanks for joining us today. And if you like our show, please tell your friends, subscribe and review, and we'll see you around the ballpark. Running the Bases with Small Businesses is brought to you by 38 Digital Market, a digital marketing agency committed to client growth with lead generation, higher conversions, and increased sales. Connect with us today at 38digitalmarket.com.